The best way to learn a language? Immersion, living where the language is spoken and using it every day. But if that's not in the cards for you this year, you can still learn a language the second best way, and that's with Babbel. Be a better you in 2024 with Babbel, the science-backed language learning app that actually works. Don't pay hundreds of dollars for private tutors or waste hours on apps that don't really help you speak the language. Babbel's quick 10-minute lessons are handcrafted by over 200 language experts to help you start speaking a new language in as little as 3 weeks. Babbel's designed by real people for real conversations. Babbel's tips and tools are approachable, accessible, rooted in real-life situations, and delivered with conversation-based teaching so you're ready to practice what you've learned in the real world. For instance, I've been using Babbel's convenient courses to help me learn basic conversational skills in German while I'm getting ready for a little trip I'm planning. It's not a language I'd ever studied before, but I find the lessons really easy and kind of like hand-holding me through learning a completely new language to me. And it's reassuring to know that with the help of Babbel, I'll be able to greet people, order food, and ask for directions without having to consult language apps while I'm in Deutschland. I'm still learning. Studies from Yale, Michigan State University, and others continue to prove Babbel is better. One study found that using Babbel for 15 hours is equivalent to a full semester at college. Babbel has over 16 million subscriptions sold. Plus, all of Babbel's 14 award-winning language courses are backed by their 20-day money-back guarantee. Here's a special limited-time deal for our listeners. Right now, get up to 60% off your Babbel subscription, but only for our listeners at babbel.com/vulgar. Get up to 60% off at babbel.com/vulgar, spelled BABBEL.com/vulgar. Rules and restrictions may apply.
Hi, this is Rob Benedict.
And I am Richard Spate. We were both on a little show you might know called Supernatural.
It had a pretty good run, 15 seasons, 327 episodes.
And though we have seen, of course, every episode many times, we figured, hey, now that we're wrapped, let's watch it all again.
And we can't do that alone, so we're inviting the cast and crew that made the show along for the ride. We've got writers, producers, composers, directors, and we'll of course have some actors on as well, including some certain guys that played some certain pretty iconic brothers.
It was kind of a little bit of a left field choice in the best way possible.
The note from Kripke was, he's great, we love him, but we're looking for like a really intelligent Duchovny type.
With 15 seasons to explore, it's going to be the road trip of several lifetimes. So please join us and subscribe to Supernatural then and now.
Hello, and welcome back to Vulgar History, a feminist women's history comedy podcast. This is the Mary Queen of Scots season, and there's so much to get into because, again, I can't believe I ever thought I would do this in 4 episodes. That was just like a ridiculous thing, I thought. And imagine if I had, how much weird stuff I'd have to skip. I'm Ann Foster, and I'm joined today by Allison Epstein.
Hello, hello. I am back. Happy to be here.
I think it's interesting. So, like your first appearances on this podcast, not this season, but in general, were just dirtbag adjacent reasons. Like, I brought you on when I had a story of like a weird dirtbag, so you could react to it.
I was your kind of your straight man to the what on earth is happening in this story kind of thing. So yeah, those have been my greatest hits so far.
Well, and then we brought you on for Darnley because he is your nemesis.
The worst. I hate him so much. I would blow him up in his house myself if I could.
Yeah. And then we had Bothwell, which is just, honestly, it's like, wow, Darnley, what a terrible husband. Like, oh, wow. Like, could
it get worse?
She's married to Bothwell for a month. And it was like, at least as bad as Darnley was. But now we're into part of the story that like, you don't know as well. So now I'm just kind of like telling you stuff.
Which is, I also love when you tell me stories. It's why I listen to the podcast in the first place. So.
Exactly. So this is just like you listen to the podcast, but you happen to also be recording what you're up to.
Yes. I'm also a deep enthusiast of Mary Queen of Scots, but like I was telling Anne right before we started recording, I know a lot about what happened in France and I know a lot about what happened in England. But then after Darnley gets blown up in Scotland, there's just like a period of some years that I'm not as familiar with.
Well, and that's a period of time that I don't blame any movie maker, historical fiction writer for glossing over, because it's just like 75 men all called James writing weird contracts with each other over and over again.
There's a lot of paperwork, more than I expected.
There's a lot of paperwork. There's a lot of men called James. There's a lot of just people not being sure. Like, no one's in charge. It's just like 28 guys, and none of them is really steering what they're doing, but they all know that they want to do something. And anyway, we'll see the result of that. So first let's say my references. So Mary Queen of Scots Secretary, William Maitland, Politician, Reformer, and Conspirator by Robert Stedell. Mary Queen of Scots, Escape from Lochleven Castle by Teresa Breslin, which is an illustrated children's picture book. And you know what? I'm all for more illustrated children's picture books about very specific moments in the lives of historical figures. Mary Was Here, Where Mary Queen of Scots Went, and What She Did There by Historic Scotland. Embroidering Her Truth, Mary Queen of Scots in the Language of Power by Claire Hunter. Daughters of the North, Jean Gordon and Mary Queen of Scots by Jennifer Warwick Henderson. And Homecoming by Rosemary Goring. So, I didn't write down the subtitle, but Homecoming by Rosemary Goring. That's like Mary Queen of Scots in Scotland and what she did while she was in Scotland. So last time, William Cecil was revealed as the Wizard of Oz behind everything. He manipulated Bothwell into forcing Mary to marry him, despite Bothwell having 3 current other wives. This turned everyone in Scotland against him and kind of her. Bothwell fled. Mary surrendered to the asshole Confederacy, who claimed, yeah, come with us. We're going to restore you to be the queen. Just like march on with us behind this banner of your murdered husband.
And your screaming child.
Totally chill vibes. So when Mary struck this deal with the rebel assholes, she believed she was returning to Edinburgh to resume her reign and be reunited with her son. And honestly, she had faced down against assholes several times before, and that had always weirdly happened after. She just kind of like went back and it's like business as usual. I'm queen again. But then the rebels dismissed the women who were with her, like Mary Seton from the Four Marys, leaving her escorted back to Edinburgh just by male soldiers. And she was riding just next to the banner showing the corpse of Darnley and her baby son being like, avenge me, oh Lord Jesus, or whatever. So she must have been like, oh no. I think she later wrote, or someone said, she said, like, I wish I had never seen that banner, which I don't know if she had seen the illustration before, but to see that banner and then to have to like ride into town next to a banner of like your murdered husband.
I wonder if they kept the tasteful ink blot over his private parts.
I'm not sure. And I might have answers for you in next time's episode because one of my books does delve a lot into this banner. One of the books I've been reading. So she entered Edinburgh, and throughout this story, throughout these last 6-7 episodes, she's entered Edinburgh a lot of times, generally to cheering crowds. Last time to perplexed crowds being like, is she a prisoner of Bothwell? Should we cheer? But this time, it was clear she had lost the support of the people because as she entered Edinburgh, they screamed obscenities and threw mud at her, yelling things like, burn the whore and murderess.
Fairly direct, yeah, not a lot of interpretation.
No, it's kind of like, oh, this is a change. And remember, also, she's still wearing the borrowed outfit from last time, where she had to get clothes from like a much shorter peasant woman, which did include, just because I know you're a hat enthusiast, the outfit she borrowed did include a velvet hat.
Excellent.
So, yeah.
The one good thing about this outfit, I'm sure.
Yeah, but did she sit there on the horse being self-pitying? No, in fact, she yelled at the asshole soldiers who were taking her, being like she was going to hang and crucify them for betraying her. She told Lindsay, a character who we first met last time, but I think you'll remember because his name is Lindsay. She told, I will have your head for this. And, you know, literally, she meant that. So she wasn't just being taken and like, I guess this is what's happening to me. Like after that, like the Bothwell era Mary was just not an active participant in a lot of what happened there. She was just kind of like being dragged along. Like she was having health issues. She was having mental health issues. Like she was not the Mary we knew because she was overwhelmed with emotions and grief and medical issues and things. But our girl is back this week in the episode. But she's also, interestingly, in times of wild crisis, she really thrives. Like when Like, I think one of her most impressive eras was when the night that Rizzio was murdered and how she turned that all around. Like, in a crisis, she's your girl. Like, she steps up.
She's really, really good. The chips are down, which is great because
Yeah.
her chips are always down all the time. So I'm glad she's good in a crisis. She'd better be.
Yeah. Exactly. So here, and I don't know, it's also like she's always trying to find allies and people to work with her, but she's so good on her own. Like last time, like she was relying on Bothwell, and that went very badly, obviously, but she was just kind of letting him take over, and she stepped back, which I'm sure was good for her just to like maybe sleep and like get better. But here she is isolated again, and this is where she's just like a feral cat who's just like, oh, you're going to fuck with me? I will murder you. So anyway, that's the vibe. So she was taken instead of to the castle, she's taken to this like fancy house on Edinburgh's High Street, where she's placed under guard in an upstairs room, and the dead Darnley banner was positioned opposite her window in the street below. So when she looked outside, it's like, there it is. A mob outside continued to yell abuse up to her. She was offered supper but refused because she sensibly assumed it was poisoned.
I'm sure it was.
And so she was kept in the room. So this is like, I'm trying to think who's in charge of this. Well, that's the thing. Kind of no one is, which is part of the problem. Because they had defeated Bothwell, but now it's like no one was in charge of the other side.
The Confederacy of Lords is still just kind of a blob of asshole men.
Yeah, like Hollywood icon Jimmy Stewart is kind of in charge, but he's not there because he's never there when shit goes down because he wants to keep his hands clean. So no one's quite sure what to do. So they put her in this house, but they do know that she is like a cunning bitch. So they're just like, she will escape. She will make a rope out of sheets. She will put on men's clothes. She will switch places.
She will lower herself onto a horse like it's Mission Impossible. We got ideas.
Yeah, no, like we know, like they, to their credit, question mark, like they knew that she was good at this shit.
Cunning bitch, complimentary.
Yes, absolutely. So she was in the room, and there were guards, like male guards, in the room with her the whole time because they knew that she might come up with some sort of scheme. But this also meant that she was in the room by herself. There's no ladies with her to help her undress because this is the era where like dresses, there's not zippers. Like you just get pinned in and out of your dresses by like a group of people.
There are no zippers, despite what the costume designers on Rain would have you believe.
Yeah, fair. Well, this is where, whatever, this episode's coming out a few weeks from now, but there's a new movie coming out called Firebrand about Catherine Parr with Alicia Vikander is in it playing Catherine Parr and Jude Law as Henry VIII. And costume design social media are losing their minds at how accurate the costumes are. I've never seen the costume design. Like, I love costume designers on social media and on podcasts, like my beloved Frock Flicks, because they're so picky, and they're like, oh, I noticed that extra is wearing a dress from 1763 and this West is wearing a dress from 1754. Like, oh my, like they notice so many things, and I love how they notice things. But this trailer came out, and like unanimously, they're all just like, oh my god, she's wearing a French hood with a chin strap, They're losing their minds. But one of the images that was released of it was Alicia Vikander, and she's wearing a dress, and someone was like, it's pinned on. People are losing their minds in a good way about those costumes. I was like, oh, pinned on. Like, yeah, that does look complicated to put on and off. Yeah. Anyway, so Mary is there in this like borrowed too short dress that is pinned on. She can't change out of it. She had no privacy even when using the chamber pot. She's pregnant. So I bet
she's pregnant at this point.
They don't, but I bet she was peeing a lot. So this is humiliating, but also speaks to how much they knew that she was a wily bitch. At some point, she looked out the window and passed the banner of her dead husband and baby son, screaming for revenge. Scottish Machiavelli was on the street, and she tried to like get his attention, but he was just like, I don't see you, and he wouldn't look at her. Later, he did come up to talk to her, and he told her if she rejected Bothwell, that he would be able to protect her from those who wanted her dead. She was like, guess what, dipshit? Bothwell gave me this piece of paper with your name on it, with all y'all's names on it. It says James 45 times. That's all of you.
Why did Bothwell do that? Why? Was he just like, you know what? I'd like to admit to murder before I leave town.
I don't know, but why did she tell him she had this piece of paper? Because she's like, I have this piece of paper and I'm going to expose all of y'all as the murderers of Darnley. I know that you are the reason this investigation didn't see through. Like, I'm going to expose you all. And at some point that night, this paper was taken from her and never seen again. Anyway, she continued to demand to be released, to have a hearing, like to be told what she's being charged with. but there's no response, and she grew, quote, hysterical. I don't know what other word to use. She was crying and screaming, and I don't know.
As most of us would be if we were arrested without charges and interrogated for several hours while staring at the banner of our dead husband and screaming child.
Yeah. After having just been in like a weird, coercive, toxic, abusive nightmare kidnapping.
While also recovering from sexual assault and still being pregnant.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, she's upset.
Yeah. She's upset. She's upset. So the next morning, she went to the window, and somebody who saw her described that she was in so miserable a state, her hair hanging around her ears. And okay, I'll say how they described it. Her breasts, most part of all her body from the waist up, bare and discovered.
Sad tits out?
So tits out but sad? Or just was it just like her top was like loosened? Or was she just like I'm not sure. I'm not sure. I've never encountered tits out but sad before. But yeah. Anyway, she's just like, have sympathy for me. Later, those who wanted to besmirch her name would rewrite this to be like, she was so sad she's separated from her true love, Bothwell. She's crying out for Bothwell, that she wanted to see her lover again.
No.
Which was categorically not what she was crying about. But anyway, so bear in mind, the thing is, Hollywood icon Jimmy Stewart is like off in France or something, just being like, oh, I'll just kind of wait for the chips to fall where they may, and then I'll swoop in. So nobody knew what to do. So initially, they were pressuring her to divorce Bothwell, which she refused to do because she knew by now, they didn't know, that she was pregnant by him. She didn't want the child to be illegitimate. But she also probably thought, maybe he's going to come and rescue me and we can like take over again. She didn't know that he was off in a dungeon in Denmark or whatever, which he was not yet. At this point, he was trying to get supporters to help him, and no one was joining him.
He was being rejected by ex-wife number 1, about to be rejected by ex-wife number 2.
Exactly. So, but even if she did divorce him, which is also like a Protestant thing, not a Catholic thing. So they were like, you need to divorce Bothwell. And like, let's say she did that. Like if Mary was like single again, she would still have the power to overthrow these guys. And she would insist on like, as soon as she had power again, she would get a parliamentary inquiry into the murder of Darnley now that she knew that they had done it. And she would prove her own innocence because she had she had seen the piece of paper. As we're going to see in the story, someone having seen a piece of paper can be evidence even if that piece of paper is no longer there. Anyway, so the lords were just kind of like, ugh, like we can't let her have power again because she knows that we killed Darnley and that will expose us, and then we can't, whatever we want to do. I don't know what any of their plans are.
Well, I'm sure their plans were not get executed for the murder of Darnley, and so her being able to prosecute them for that would get in the way of the plan of staying alive.
That's it. That's what their plan is. Their plan is just let's not be executed. And so to do that, they had to like keep her prisoner. But until they could prove, quote unquote, that she had been involved, like complicit in the murder of Darnley, they had to keep her away so she wouldn't expose them. And they also had to keep her like away from any allies who might come and try to help her. So they had to isolate her. Another thing to keep in mind, Mary at this point, I'm going to blow your mind, listeners. So she's 24 years old. She came to Scotland when she was 18. So she has spent basically 5-6 years from like landing in Scotland till now. It feels like 25 years, but
she's 24. She's been married 3 times. Lord. Remember when you were 24, Anne? Like, I was not here for any of the things she's doing.
I was not successfully leading multiple armies against multiple civil wars led by
when I was
people
24, I have a very vivid memory of crying through doing my taxes alone for the first time. So I think like, historians don't cut her a lot of slack for being barely not a child at this point.
Very much so. Yeah, so she's 24, but here's the clutch thing. So this is what, it's like June. So that December, she would be her birthday and she would turn 25. And so there's this law in Scotland that when you turn 25, when any of their series of baby monarchs turns 25, that's the age of majority. At that point, they can undo things that happened previously in their reign. Like they will be in full power.
Oh, they get like a do-over? That's neat.
Yeah. So when she turns 25, she could do things that like take away lands and titles that have been given to them. So they really wanted to just like make her not be queen by the time she's 25, basically, which is a ticking clock because she's 24 right now.
24 in 6 months, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. They needed to kind of keep her both somewhere where allies, like supporters, couldn't free her, but also somewhere where she couldn't spread the word that they had killed Darnley, but also to keep her somewhere where maybe they could keep her indefinitely so that when she turns 25, she wouldn't take away all their lands and titles. So they were just kind of like, well, I don't know. And again, no one's in charge. So they stopped in at Holyrood, where two of the four Marys were there. So she's able to like change in her own clothes, like see the Marys and just like eat food because she hadn't been eating because of poison reasons. And she was there for a minute. And then suddenly, like, I think in the middle of dinner, they came up and they're like, actually, we're leaving now, totally, to go visit your son. I promise. And she's like, okay. And then they went out in their whatever horses. And she's like, that's not the way to where my son is. They're like, isn't it? Because they're headed to a place called Lochleven Castle, which is on an island in the middle of a loch, which is like a lake, but Scottish.
Scottish Kids Out Brigade can correct us, but that's my understanding as well.
Yeah. So being on an island, the only way to reach this place was via boat, which meant that it would be really hard for her supporters to come and get her because you would see the boat coming and you could stop it. So Lochleven Castle was also owned by a Douglas.
A Douglas!
Is owned by a Douglas, Sir William Douglas, aka WD-40. Do you have that in the US?
Yes, we do.
Okay.
Oh boy, that's great.
And WD-40 is the half brother of Hollywood icon Jimmy Stewart, but in the other direction.
So it's his dad's mother?
Same mom.
Yeah, okay.
They have the same mom, WD-40 and Hollywood icon Jimmy Stewart.
That's my favorite of your nicknames so far, by the way.
WD-40?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, so they had the same mother who had been the mistress to Mary's dad, J5. And there's other siblings as well. There's also a sister named Euphemia,
Ooh.
which is a great name. In a story full of Janets and Marys. I'm sorry, Euphemia?
I hope she gets to hang out with Lindsay just for a whimsical day.
Allison, they're married to each other.
What, are you kidding me? I'm so happy.
Euphemia and Lindsay are a married couple.
Fuck yeah.
Yeah. So WD-40 also has a wife, Lady Agnes Douglas, who was pregnant at this time, and she was assigned the job of being Mary's shadow. Again, they know she's a crafty bitch. So Lady Agnes Douglas was staying with her 24/7, like including sleeping in the same room. I'm going to guess same bed because of this whole Scottish bed shortage. Also shadowing her, but in an unofficial capacity, were WD-40's teen daughter and niece, who I think just thought she was an icon and just like wanted to follow her around.
That's awesome.
WD-40 was also under oath to kill Mary if she tried to escape. So, like, the fact that Hollywood icon Jimmy Stewart is still, like, not physically here, but the fact that they're like, let's put Mary on this island owned by his mom. Like, so he's clearly, like, behind this and had helped come up with this idea, at least. So Mary arrived there. She did not eat for 2 weeks
Ooh.
because of fear of being poisoned, which, sensible fear.
It's not an irrational fear. Yeah.
No, it's anyway. And she obviously, but also, I don't know. She did not eat for 2 weeks, maybe from fear of poisoning, maybe because when her like anxiety response to a stressful situation is she loses her appetite. So anyway, of course, all of her various illnesses triggered. Her limbs swole. She developed pustules, and she's also actively pregnant. So she didn't know what was going on. Not just because no one told her, but also the assholes didn't know what was going on. They just kind of like put her there and they're like, let's figure this out later. But so a warrant had been issued for her to be kept incarcerated indefinitely for helping Bothwell kill Darnley. And then she was also being accused of interfering in the investigation of Darnley's murder, like as though it's her fault that they didn't investigate properly.
Interfered in the murder in the Darnley's murder trial? Every single man in Scotland. Like, every single person. She's the only one who didn't.
Yeah. And so this warrant, just bear in mind, just for consistency in this podcast series, was a piece of paper which was signed by everybody. Because these guys they see a piece of paper, they sign it. These guys are just into signing papers. But meanwhile, back in England, surprise, Elizabeth was like, wait, what? What? Because we talked last time about how Elizabeth, her thing is like, We need to treat monarchs special. And if someone starts like putting a queen in prison, for instance, that could be slippery slope to like someone putting me in jail. So, not a fan of this. She was 100% on Mary's side against the asshole Confederacy. In fact, Elizabeth called to raise an army to save her, not for like, because women support women, but because Mary was a queen, Elizabeth was a queen. And this is not like just the fact that any queen was treated this way was like offensive to her. It was like
Offensive and
horrifying.
also extremely threatening to her because her own
Yeah, yeah.
legitimacy on the throne of England was, like, not very certain in people's eyes anyway, so if all of those angry Catholics in England were like, "Ooh, we can imprison queens on islands and lakes, maybe we should do that." Like, she couldn't.
No, so it's interesting. There's like again, the story changes and develops and people's goals and motivations change. But like so much of for even myself, like people who don't know the story super well, myself 6 months ago, there's this idea that like Mary versus Elizabeth, like that's the rivalry, that's what's going on. But like Elizabeth is like very supportive of her at this time in this way. She was like, raise a goddamn army, let's go free my girl.
Elizabeth has
William
no
Cecil,
problem with Mary being Mary, Queen of Scots. That is
no,
fine and dandy to her.
yeah. So yeah, but William Cecil is like, or
Hear me
we
out.
could not. He's like hiding his whiteboard with like a poster
He's
of
hiding
like
it
the Fast
behind
and
a
the
giant
Furious.
flag with Darnley's dead body on it.
Yes, 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 yes,
Yeah.
yes. Oh my God, yes. So he's like, what if we don't go to war, but instead send an envoy to go and just like make sure she's treated okay? And that happens. The envoy is Sir Nicholas Throckmorton, aka Throcko, who goes. His job is not just to see if she's okay. His job is he's sent there to negotiate Mary's release and reinstatement. So Throcko shows up and he is denied permission to see her because the lords are like, Mary, there's no one called Mary here. Boop, boop, boop. Don't worry about it. But he persisted because he knew that it would be like really easy for them to kill her and make it look like an accident or an illness or something. And Mary also knew that, right? That's why she's like suspicious of all food she's being fed.
I
So
Was Throckmorton a Catholic? Or,
I
like,
don't
a
know.
closet Catholic? I feel like that maybe he was interested in Mary for personal reasons as well as
All I know in terms of the story that I'm telling you right now, but I could research more for next week, is that he is a good guy who is like helping her out. So he figured out a way to smuggle a letter to her. So you remember there's Moby Dick from last time. So Moby Dick, who is Sir something Melville, who was Mary's secretary when she was being held by Bothwell. So Moby Dick has a brother, Sir Robert Melville,
Bob Dick.
who
Yes,
is
familiar.
so what happens is he's helping out. Like Sir Robert is like an okay person. So Throcko hid the letter in Sir Robert's scabbard, like of his sword. And so the letter got to her. And so she read the letter, and the letter said, like, you should break all ties with Bothwell. Like, this is how you can survive.
Also, can I just say, before we go on, I love that they're confiscating letters, but what they're not confiscating apparently are swords. They're
Yeah.
like, "Hide it on your sword, they won't take that away from you. You go in."
Yeah. Well, no, and that's true. They didn't want Mary to correspond with anybody because they didn't want her to reveal that they had killed Darnley and they didn't want anyone to offer her help. But you're right. You're right. They're just like, you know what we don't accept on here? Letters. Swords, cool. That's cool. That's
Swords
cool.
are good, no worries.
Yeah. We won't even search your sword. Like, it's fine. Anyway, so she sent a letter back, I guess, through the scabbard. And she was just like, I can't break ties with Bothwell. I am pregnant and my child can't be named illegitimate. There's also concerns about like if she had Bothwell's child, would like James be murdered? Like there's a lot of stuff about like what would happen.
Was this the big public reveal of her presidency, her pregnancy?
I'm not sure. I know I do have a thing. I'm not sure. But at least Throcko knows and Sir Robert knows. Throcko heard that the lords are going to make her abdicate, so he smuggled another letter to her via scabbard, urging her. He said basically, yeah, okay, they're going to give you this abdication paperwork, but that like this will save your life if you sign it, and like anything that it won't be legal. Like a forced abdication is not legal and you can revoke it later. So just sign it. That will make you. So like he had been sent there to like negotiate her reinstatement and her release, but now he's just trying to make her be not murdered. Is his focus. Meanwhile, in Edinburgh, to the surprise of nobody, posters! A poster campaign. John Knox returned to Edinburgh
With his
and he was
teenage
given
bride.
with his teenage bride and their children. and he thundered against the whore of Babylon. He called her the Scarlet Adventuress.
Okay, that's dope as hell, John Knox.
That's the merch idea. The Scarlet Adventuress.
I love it. I would like to watch that show.
Me too. So anyway, there's posters. The posters going up just being like, Mary is a whore, etc. John Knox is just back being like, look at my beard. She sucks. Don't look at my teenage bride. It's totally not like a Courtney Stodden situation at all. He said, quote, God would send a great plague on the whole nation if Mary was spared from punishment. So he, you know what? He was just being like, she's awful. She sucks. And before she even arrived, and then she arrived and he's like, she's awful. And it's like, she's literally an 18-year-old Catholic widow who's wears pants sometimes, and he's all like, she's the devil, but now she's actually done stuff, so he like his sermons like make more sense, maybe, I don't know. Anyway, whatever, he could not be more excited that she did something he could be actually mad about. So Throcko is just like Mary's pal. This is, when we get to the Lady Jane Seymour Award, like Davy Rizzio is a strong contender obviously, but Throcko is just like coming in clutch. So he saw, again, he's not seeing her, but he's hearing that like she needs more gentle women around her. She's very few servants. There's just these like teen girls trailing after her. There's this like pregnant wife who's like in her room all the time. She needed her girls. So he appealed to Elizabeth that she needed more gentle women around her, and Mary Seton from the Four Marys was allowed to come join her. And then around the 24th of July, Mary had a miscarriage. So there's some timeline stuff I want to get into. The widespread understanding of this is that she miscarried twins, but I don't think she could have known it was twins that early.
Not with that level of obstetric medicine.
No. So I checked with Titsot Brigade member Isabel, who is a specialty trainee in obstetrics and gynecology. And she said it is incredibly unlikely that at 7 weeks, what she passed wouldn't have been distinguishable as two sacs, even if they weren't identical. Like, even an experienced midwife wouldn't necessarily be like, oh, that's that. So why would she have said it was twins if she didn't know that? But this is where the timeline of it all. So it's like, if she became pregnant when Bothwell first kidnapped her, which was a month before their marriage, she might have just been, she wouldn't have wanted to admit that she got pregnant before she married Bothwell, because then the child would be illegitimate because he was married to Jean at the time. So she had to date her pregnancy as not happening until after she married Bothwell. But if she was starting to show more, her cover story might have been like, oh, it's twins. Like,
right,
to cover the fact that she's looking more pregnant than maybe she should be.
Is it also possible that if the pregnancy dated from earlier, then she might be far enough along at this point to know it was twins?
That is possible. Yeah. Yeah. But I don't think she would have dated. I don't think she would have known.
Right.
I guess a midwife could have seen. So it's kind of unclear. It's just interesting to me that the commonly accepted thing here is that she miscarried twins, where it's like, we don't actually know. The
right.
Whatever passed from her body cannot be examined at this point. But yeah, so I don't know. It could have been twins, and it could have been Bothwell's twins. Anyway, she had a miscarriage. Guess what? She has a gazillion health issues already. This is another one. The news of, you were asking, like, was her pregnancy widely known? In fact, no. So this news was kept from like the everyday people, or from most people, from other nobles, I think too, because it would make people sympathetic to her if they heard that she had miscarried, and they didn't want people to have sympathy for her. They wanted people to hate her. So I don't think the pregnancy was widely known at that point. The miscarriage caused her to hemorrhage. She became incredibly ill. Because she's also been not eating and in a stressful situation and has all these like comorbidities. So, of course, because the assholes are assholes, they're like, it's a great moment to get her to sign the abdication paperwork while she's bedridden, grieving her child loss. So that is when they came to her, lying in her bed. So the person who brought the paperwork was, in fact, Lindsay. And when she refused to sign the paperwork, Lindsay threatened to cut her throat if she did not agree. And so she signed. So, like, bearing in mind what Throcko had told her, like, this can be redacted later. Like, if you sign this under duress, it doesn't count.
And I think "I will cut your throat" really counts as duress in this situation.
Especially being said by a man holding a knife to your throat who you've seen murder other people.
While you're in bed and can't get up. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So, and you're in an island where no one can get to you and you can't cry for help. Anyway, so what she signed was paperwork confirming one saying, like, I step down, I am no longer Queen of Scotland. The second one said the new regent will be Hollywood icon Jimmy Stewart. And the third thing would appoint a regency council. So, like, Hollywood icon Jimmy Stewart is officially the regent, but there'd also be a council of like advisors, which would comprise basically all the greatest hits. Councilman Jeremy Jam, you know, the guys. So anyway, in her own words, vexed, broken, and unquiet, she signed away her crown, hoping that she could get it back later. So then BJ's coronation was held in Edinburgh. She had like another, I could think of the baby size crown. It's like another baby king.
Go get the
Scotland.
tiny crown. James. I assume it was a James.
Yeah. James needs his tiny crown, James. It says it's engraved James, baby James. So Mary wasn't told that this was happening. She only was just like, she was in her like room, I guess getting better. And she was like, why are there bonfires being lit and people are like dancing in the gardens outside? And they're like, oh, they're celebrating because the coronation of your son. And Mary was like, James will avenge me, once he stops being a literal infant.
James will avenge me. It says so on the flag outside.
It does, actually. She stared at that flag so long that night when she was in that room.
I know what James will do. He will avenge me, oh Lord. I know.
Again, she and Throcko have a good thing going with messages back and forth. Throcko gets the messages to Elizabeth. So she told Elizabeth she would rather herself and the prince were in your realm than elsewhere in Christendom. So she's just really being like, I wish I was with Elizabeth. I think things would be okay if I was with her.
And she's got good reason for thinking that because Elizabeth's the only one sending her people who are trying to help her.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah. Elizabeth is the one who like made her be not murdered.
Yeah.
Right now. So at the coronation, though, like although there was bonfires and stuff and people were writing letters being like, everyone in Scotland is so excited about the new baby king. It's like no one was excited. Most of the nobles did not attend the coronation. And even like the asshole rebels, like they'd taken over the council, but they didn't have the support of like the wider nobility who were just kind of like not cool with this like coup that was happening. Even if they had been on the anti-Bothwell side before, like there's like a core group of people who are like keeping Mary on this island, and that's not everybody. That's this group. Actually, fun fact. That's what my notes say. Fun fact. So this is just because Hollywood icon Jimmy Stewart is coming back on the scene. So I just wanted to clarify a bit more about him. So before Mary even returned to Scotland, so to recap very quickly, so her father died when she was 6 days old. She became the baby queen of Scotland. Her mother, Marie de Guise, fought until Marie de Guise, was named the regent. But then, like Hollywood icon Jimmy Stewart and a bunch of other Protestant guys were like, no, you shouldn't be the regent. We should be the group of asshole regents. And in fact, Hollywood icon Jimmy Stewart was just like, I should be goddamn king. This is like in the Marie de Guise era. So he was like, if I was legitimate, then I would be the king right now. So he tried to get his mother's marriage annulled to her husband, which would mean that he would be the legitimate son of the king, which is not true, but he tried.
That doesn't work.
Because he's not the son of the queen. So
right. Is it like any child that the king has not? I don't know.
It did not work. His petition was rejected for being nonsensical, presumably. But this just shows like even before Mary came, he was like, I should be in charge. So, like with the Cock of the North scenario and everything, like he was always actively working against her. And that's because he always clearly felt like he should be in charge. So now he's the regent. So like he's got what he always wanted, I guess. Except she was still alive and could rally supporters at a moment's notice as soon as she was off this goddamn island. So he was overseeing her, quote, care at Lochleven. So he was the one who's treating her really badly. Like basically like neglecting her actively, like just trying to humble her and break her psychologically so she wouldn't attempt to restore herself to the crown. But he forgot no one puts Mary in a corner. This is when she's at her strongest, when she's being isolated and someone's trying to bring her down. But that's the reason why she was like not given enough ladies. She didn't get her outfits. She wasn't fed enough. Like she didn't have enough things to do. She requested a professional embroiderer. Like she wanted to have a household. Like she wanted to like, bedazzle her outfits. But instead she was sent. So the court embroiderer kind of like traced out a pattern that he sent her and thread and was like, here's how you do it. But they wouldn't send the actual embroiderer there for her. She's also, because she's on a little tiny island, like she couldn't do like horseback riding or hunting or like the things she liked to do. So she just really got into embroidery at this point. So she already was like doing embroidery. That was like a thing lots of people did. It was a creative outlet. It was a way to sort of communicate your thoughts and feelings. There's in the book, the Claire Hunter book that I used a lot as a reference. She talks about Catherine de Medici never wrote journals, but she did so much embroidery. And through that, you kind of get it. It's like looking at someone's scrapbook. It's like, what did they choose to do and what was their style like? You can really see what they were thinking through what they were doing. So she really turned to embroidery just for self-expression, I think. Sewing is tactile, it has a rhythm, it steadies the mind and calms the spirit and can be therapeutic. So maybe this is just like helping her in that way as well. It's also a way to communicate for those whose voices are going unheard in other ways, Claire Hunter wrote.
And it's always, I'm sure your book gets into this as well, but it's always devalued in, like, every single period drama you've ever watched. So, I don't wanna sit at home and embroider all the time, I want to have adventures, and it's just like, I hate that so much. Like, this is
Mhm.
it's devalued because it's women's work, but it's art and it's practical. It's like a skill. It's not just a thing
Yeah.
you do while you're waiting for your husband to come home from the war. Like, Mary Queen of
No,
Scots is embroidering. It's not like
it's a huge thing. Yeah, it's for sure. Let me just say, wait, the title of the book again is Embroidering Her Truth, Mary Queen of Scots in the Language of Power by Claire Hunter. It's really, really, really interesting. Like she talks about Mary Queen of Scots, but also about that sort of stuff, like how the power in embroidery. And I think you're right. Like there's so many things like in the Brave, the Pixar movie,
yeah.
she's like, oh, I don't want to do embroidery, I want to do archery. Or like in Game of Thrones, like Sansa is like, oh, I want to do embroidery. And everyone's like, she sucks. Arya's cool because she does sword fighting. Mary also did sword fighting. But like the embroidery that she did was, and we're gonna get to this in next week's episode, really expresses what she was thinking and feeling. And we can really, like a journal would. Like, why are people not like, oh, she's writing a journal? That's women's work. It's like, anyway, even painting, I think, is respected more than
Because
embroidery.
men paint.
True. True. Yeah. So this is a period of time where embroidery was becoming a thing that lots of women did. I don't know if I forget. It's in this book, but like just the kinds of needles and thread and stuff that there were, like it was people really getting into it. Like Catherine de Medici was so into it. She left behind like hundreds of thousands of things, and you can really learn about people by what they did. Anyway, so she's getting really into embroidery at this point in her life for various reasons. And I like the idea that it's a way to communicate for people who are not able to communicate in other ways. And so the weeks/months went on, and she acclimated to what her situation was. She was able to stroll around the gardens. She worked on her embroidery. She did other indoor things, playing cards. She danced and played music when she was able to. So this is could be mistaken for the people there. At first, she shows up. They're like, we have to keep an eye on her. She's a crafty bitch. But eventually, they're like, she seems fine. So she starts like getting more freedoms and more things to do. Not freedoms, but just like she's allowed to do more things.
We won't be hovering over you all the time because you're probably going to be needle pointing.
Yeah, and the other people don't have the energy to be following her 24 hours a day for this long. In August, so she was arrested in June, and so this is like 2 months later. Hollywood icon Jimmy Stewart came to visit her. So baby James had been like crowned in July, so a month later. Jimmy Stewart comes to visit Mary. I love this detail. So he arrived on like one of her horses, and he like fell off into the loch when he arrived.
And Mary's like, "The horse?"
Yeah, exactly, exactly. So then he came to her room and he started just like mansplain, yelling at her about like, how dare you marry Bothwell? You're such a shitty person. Blah. And then he was like, but I don't know, should I accept the job of regent? And she was like, well, you are the bastard son of our shared father, so fuck you. And he's like, I already am the regent. I was just asking you to be polite. So rewind to what he's been doing. So all rewind actually all the way back to when she had the gastric ulcer that time, before Darnley was even dead. So Hollywood icon Jimmy Stewart, then he's like, what? Mary's getting sick and might die. And he like started secretly like taking some of her possessions, like her jewelry and stuff. Cause he's like, well, then I can be in charge. And so now that she was actually in jail, he decided that he had the right to all of her things. And so he took everything, including not just like jewelry that were like the crown jewels of Scotland, but things that were like personal gifts given to Mary, like by her first husband, Francis, and things like that.
Did he take the tortoise?
I don't know.
Because if he did, I hope he's burning it.
I don't know. I know. So like she had, she wrote a will bequeathing this jewel to this person and this jewel to, I think he took everything. Her most on paper priceless thing was she had this many stringed necklace of rare black pearls, each as large as a grape. Yeah, which Mary had worn when she was Queen of France. And he needed money for Scotland. So this is the thing. He took the jewelry to try and sell it, to pawn it. Well, he gave some to his wife and then other things started to pawn. So he offered these black pearls to Catherine de Medici, who was interested. She likes a black look. It's her color. He also offered them to Elizabeth I, and Elizabeth I bought them. And actually, her famous portrait of Elizabeth the Armada portrait, she's wearing them.
Wow.
Yeah. I'll post that on Instagram. I know, the tortoise. Anyway, so speaking of Elizabeth, so once Hollywood icon Jimmy Stewart was installed as regent, and it seemed like Mary's murder was not gonna happen anytime soon, so Thurako was recalled. But Elizabeth never formally accepted Jimmy Stewart as regent because she could not be seen to condone Mary being kicked out of being queen, because that would set a precedent against her. Anyway, meanwhile, so Mary's just in this castle, whatevering. But it's kind of they can't just keep her there forever. They need to, they're okay, we want to prove that she was complicit in the murder of Darnley, a thing she was not complicit in. So they needed to fake up some evidence to make it look like she was. By keeping her at Lochleven without a trial, the assholes could keep spreading rumors, putting up posters and making everyone think she was guilty. But they couldn't put her on trial without any evidence at all. And so my least favorite thing to talk about, one of my least favorite things to talk about in terms of Mary Queen of Scots, whenever any book I get to this part, I'm just God damn it, is the casket letters. Are you familiar with the casket letters?
Vaguely, but not enough to explain what they are.
Well, a lot of people have a lot of theories, but I think everyone mostly agrees. And now we're just going to take a break for a word from our sponsors.
As a podcast network, our first priority has always been audio and the stories we're able to share with you. But at Realm, we also sell some pretty cool merch, and organizing that was made both possible and easy with Shopify. When you think about successful businesses like Aloe or Allbirds or Skims, an often overlooked secret is the business behind the business that makes selling and, for shoppers, buying simple. For millions of businesses, that business is Shopify. That's because nobody does selling better than Shopify. It's the home of the #1 checkout on the planet. And the not-so-secret secret that's definitely worth talking about is that Shop Pay boosts conversions up to 50%. That's more happy customers and way more sales going. If you're hoping to grow your business, your commerce platform better be ready to sell wherever your customers are scrolling or strolling, on the web, in your store, in their feed, and everywhere in between. Businesses that sell more, sell on Shopify. Upgrade your business and get the same checkout we use with Shopify. Sign up for your $1 per month trial period at shopify.com/realm, all lowercase. Go to shopify.com/realm to upgrade your selling today. Shopify.com/realm.
Ah, the web tore. Those that both created and were created by the threads disentangle from the fringes to feast on the very thing that spawned them.
What's that, Silly? This is how you deal with me!
No! Do not harm my children! Oh, you lost a feather. Can I keep it?
No, you can't force me to!
Do you know what lies within nothing?
Rocket is in trouble, Akasa. Can we turn on the windshield remotely?
No, she could lose her job as an Akasar.
I don't fear Vehar.
No, but you fear me. If you intend to trick me, I will not hesitate to sever the oath bond entirely.
Why didn't you help me? Coward! I don't have a parachute! I don't like free falling!
Counterbalance, a high fantasy audio drama. Season 2, coming 15th of October 2023. Learn more on trilunas.com.
People often look at me with confusion when I ask them what their only one in the room story is. They think it has to be like mine, where I went to a 600-person event and discovered that I was the only Black person there. I know. Horrifying, right? Hi, I'm Laura Cathcart Robbins, and I am the host and creator of the podcast Only One in the Room. Every week, my co-host Scott Slaughter and I invite you to join us for an hour and lose yourself in someone's only one story. This podcast is for anyone who's ever felt alone in a room full of people, which is to say that this podcast is for everyone.
And we're back. So they were letters that were found in Bothwell's cabinet. They were all letters sent to Bothwell. I'm going to tell you what I think as though it's true because I think it is true. So they were letters from various people to Bothwell. They were letters, some were from Jean Gordon, some were from Scott de Fruin, Anna Tronson. Some were from Mary, but those were just kind of like business letters. Some of them were like love sonnets. Like some of them were like, oh, please, I miss you, come back to me. Like those are probably from Anna, right?
Yeah.
But anyway, they were taken, they were rewritten by somebody. None of them have signatures. It's like, let's just cut the bottoms off and pretend that no one, like the dates are all messed up. Like even the ones that maybe are from Mary, like the dates are wrong. There's like, I forget, she refers in one, like basically they found all these letters in Bothwell's house and they're like, what if we say they're all from Mary? That will make it look like she was having an affair with him because the letters are all like, oh, I miss you, I love you. They're like, let's pretend Mary wrote all these letters. And she did write some of them.
Way back when it was.
Yeah. So the point of them was to make it seem like Mary had been in love with him for a long time and that they had worked together to kill Darnley. None of the letters are like, let's work together to kill Darnley. The letters are like, hey, so did you do that thing you promised? They're all like, oh, that must mean kill Darnley.
It was like, can you please send me child support for your Danish son?
Yeah, exactly. Okay, and the whole thing is so stupid. Like William Cecil was like, this isn't going to hold up in court. You're assholes. So the original letters were mysteriously lost and only copies and extracts were provided later when there's a trial. And only copies of these copies have survived. So like the letters were like, this is the point at which the letters first were, some of the assholes were like, we just found these letters. They totally prove she's guilty. And they sent them to William Cecil. And he was like, no, they don't. Never show these to anyone.
This is
but
terrible. Why is Scotland so bad at crime?
Exactly. The rumor, it's Daniel Craig and Glass Onion just being like, it's so stupid. Why are you so stupid? William Cecil is just like, does anyone have two brain cells in Scotland?
Yuck.
Anyway, so this is where the letters show up. They're going to recur throughout the story, but this is where they came from. This is when they first arrived. And I think it's important to note that at that time, William Cecil was like, this isn't evidence. You guys are dummies. But anyway, rumors started spreading like the letters existed that showed that she was guilty and people talked about them. And that itself became sort of evidence, like just the fact that there's a rumor that evidence existed. Yeah, so they would never withstand scrutiny in court. Mary was never permitted to see them. In fact, kind of nobody was allowed to see them.
We have evidence. It's so good, no one can look.
Yeah. So meanwhile, back in Scotland, Hollywood icon Jimmy Stewart declared peace. Like, that's not how that works.
I declare bankruptcy, he said.
So this is September. So, like, the timeline is wild. Like, she was kidnapped in April. She was arrested in June, and now it's September of the same year. And she's going to turn 25 in December, right? That's the whole, like, and then all these things change. So on December 4th, 4 days before her 25th birthday, she was charged with the murder of Darnley and with the intent to murder her son.
That's
I'm
new.
not sure. Yeah, that is new. So these acts both count as high treason. So she was charged just before she turned 25. So just under the wire before she like got all these powers that she would have gotten. So Hollywood icon Jimmy Stewart was now basically king in all but name, which is all he wanted, although he wanted to be king in actual name. But he, like every person in this story, like he'd burned a lot of bridges and a lot of people hated him. He also had an unpleasant personality. And he had personally betrayed basically everyone. All of these like people are murderers.
No one likes the guy who's in on all the schemes, but is never around to take the blame for the schemes.
Yeah.
Like, no one likes.
Exactly. And so some of the people who were mad at him was the Hamilton family. So they were the ones who were like historically always the regents of all the baby kings. And they were like, wait a minute, we're the regents of the baby kings. And they were mad that he had become the regent of this baby king when they were like, but that's the Hamilton family job. So they were like, you know what? We support Mary now. And so her like supporters started to like she had supporters and they just started to like coalesce into a group that became known as the Marians. I would call them the Maid Marians. But So the Marians were trying to find ways to rescue her from this like Alcatraz like castle prison. Let me see. Other supporters included Cock of the North Jr., the Gordons, all of the Highlands, like the gang. Anyway, so we're gonna do a whole episode later on after we finish with Mary. I'm gonna do like an episode about the four Marys. So I haven't really gotten into details about them because there's a lot of stuff to talk about otherwise. But one of the four Marys was Mary Fleming, and her husband was in fact Scottish Machiavelli, but she was still on Mary's side. And presumably, and hopefully, she kind of got Scottish Machiavelli to like be more on Mary's side as well. And she's probably the person. So Mary was sent a secret gift. I don't know if this was also in the scabbard of a sword. Somehow Mary acquired a secret gift, which was a ring representing Aesop's fable of the mouse and the lion, in which the mouse gnaws through the lion's ropes. So I guess it's a thing about like how like even though you're trapped, you can still escape, even though you feel like powerless. Mary Fleming probably sent this to Mary. And so it could have just been like, hey, girl, don't give up. But it could have also been her being like, hey, guess who's on your side now? Scottish Machiavelli, my husband. It could have been indicating that. Who knows? There's a lot of codes. There's a lot of like creatures and animals and just like the posters in Edinburgh. It's like, well, this poster has the hair and everyone knows that means like there's a lot of symbolism going on that I don't entirely understand.
Yeah, feels like it's family crests, but for individual people, like how Richard III was always like the wild boar or whatever. And Richard the Lionheart. They're just like, Bothwell, the rabbit. We're running out. It's been a minute.
I don't know. Yeah. So anyway, so like she was sent this Aesop's Fables inspired ring by probably Mary Fleming, who was married to Scottish Machiavelli. So it was probably some sort of message, but we don't know what the message was. And then, please know, Mary has been nonstop scheming as well. Like while her supporters are trying to figure out ways to free her, she's just like, fuck that. I'm going to free myself. Like she's climbed out of windows onto horses. She's put on men's outfits. She outsmarted during the Rizzio murder. She's like how many times has she run off into the darkest night on a horse after climbing out a window? Like she's just like, I got this. Like if no one's going to come save me, I will save myself. So one of the things she was using was her personal charm and beauty, which was, I think, also why people were like, oh, don't trust her. But she like could win people over with her personal charm and beauty. And she did. So this did backfire in one instance here, where one of the nobles who was there guarding her like fell in love with her so hard that he like burst into her room at 4 a.m. to say if she took him as a lover, he would help her escape. She had him removed, but also like, if you want to help her, that's not how you do that.
Yeah, that guy's not going to be helpful. I'm not sure that's a good subtle schemer you want on your team.
No. So it's separating the wheat from the chaff. Who's going to be like a helpful person here?
You are going to be a hindrance, sir.
Yeah, so that guy was actually the son of the guy from the Rizzio murder who showed up in armor. That guy's son.
Of course it was. That whole family is like subtlety. Never heard of it.
No. So a useful ally was George Douglas, who is the younger brother. A Douglas, but a good one. The younger brother of WD-40 and Hollywood icon Jimmy Stewart. So another brother of Euphemia. So I don't know how old he was, but bearing in mind Mary is 25, Hollywood icon Jimmy Stewart is like 10, 12 years older. He's probably around Mary's age, probably. So like a young man. And with Bothwell now, everyone assumed he was dead. So there's a thing about like, is Mary going to take another husband was also a question/concern. And George Douglas could have been a good option. So this might have been part of what she was thinking about too. But also, the best character in this week's episode, young Willie Douglas, that's how he's known. Young Willie is what he's called.
Adorable.
AKA the orphan.
No.
Who
poor guy.
He's a young teen, and he's either one of WD-40's young cousins or his illegitimate son or something. He's like a Douglas, but he's also like lower class somehow and kind of like a servant-esque person. And so another person who is there and always ready to help is Mary Seton from the Four Marys. So with those pieces in place, we're going to go through escape attempt number 1. So this is March 1568. So she's been there since like the previous June. So not quite a year at this point. She's now clearly gotten like her health has restored after the like miscarriage, hemorrhage, not eating for 2 weeks, everything. And she's like ready to climb out some windows and like get this done. So what happened this time is that I'm not sure how she got this. Like George or young Willie, one of them helped get Mary the clothing worn by a laundress. So like they're on an island. So like the laundry ladies would come in, drop off the laundry, pick up the laundry, and then like go back on their boat. So Mary disguised herself as a washerwoman. She left the island on a pre-arranged rowboat, but the guy rowing the boat was like, "Your hands are like really clean."
Also, you're like 6 feet tall.
Yeah. So for some reason he recognized her and he's like, I'm pretty sure you're not a laundress. And then he just like rowed her back and brought her back to jail.
We do love an elaborate disguise, though. So at least she got to dress up.
She does love an elaborate disguise. I think maybe that gives her confidence, the disguises. Because she was always into disguises anyway, and outfits.
I also
So
feel like
after
it gives her something to do because she's been locked in this room. Like if you had told me 8 months into COVID, do you want to dress up like a washerwoman and try to sneak out of your apartment without your roommate seeing you? I'd have been all into that. 100% for sure.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Exactly. Yeah. So after this, so I guess the guy told on her, that guy sucks. And then her security heightened again. Like, remember, she's like super high security at first, and then they kind of lessened, and now it's like super high again.
So like, bitch is back on her schemes, calling reinforcements.
It's like we waited a year, we thought that we like demoralized her, but in fact, we only made her stronger. So she wrote, "I am so closely watched that I have no leisure but during their dinner or when they sleep that I get up, for their daughters sleep with me." So like the teen girl fan club are still just like, "We love you. You're so cool." WD-40's wife is still there sleeping with her. So she's just being followed all the time. George Douglas fought with his brother WD-40 after this because I guess he's just like, this is like, I don't think he was like, we should free her. But anyway, they had an argument about it.
The way you're treating her is kind of fucked up, bro.
Yeah. So George was banished from Lochleven. But not a bad thing, because back on the mainland, he was able to start rallying her supporters together, like getting them like aligned instead of just like, here's the Gordons up in the Highlands and here's these people here and here's the Hamiltons. He's just like, let's like come together as like a team.
Avengers assemble across Scotland.
Yes. Marians assemble. So escape attempt number 2. So Mary was, as we've discussed numerous times, but bears repeating, 6 feet tall. The walls of the castle, 7 feet tall.
She's just like, I can reach.
So she decided to climb out.
Stands on tiptoes so she can see over the castle walls.
So, she's just like, here's what we're going to do. Climb out. But first she got Mary Seton to try, like to see like what's on the other side, what we're going to land on or whatever. But Mary Seton fell and hurt herself and the guards figured out what was going on and then stopped her from doing that. By then, so WD-40's wife, Agnes, who had been her like 24-hour shadow, had her baby. And because of this was not able to be by Mary's side 24/7 because of like baby, I don't know, not that people breastfed their own babies, but just baby reasons. She just like was busy. And Mary took advantage of this with escape number 3, this time for real. So May 1568. So it's basically almost a year that she's been there. So May 1st, 1568, she wrote a letter to Elizabeth being like, oh, like, sad. I don't know. Not that anyone would see this letter. So it's not like she's pretending to be sad. Like, she is sad. But basically, she's just like, this sucks. Like, no one's coming to rescue me. I hate it. And then the next day, it all went down. Allison, get ready.
I'm so ready. I'm so ready for the Ocean's 11 of it all.
The young Willie 11. So May 2nd, time for the annual May Day celebrations at Lochleven, which includes, in a previous episode I talked about, there was the celebration they did one time where there's the Queen of the Bean, where like whoever finds the bean in the cake gets to be like queen for the day and stuff.
That's what I call my cat when she's showing the little bottoms of her feet. I call her the Queen of the Bean.
Queen of the Bean? That's a merch idea as well. So in this celebration, in this festival, there was a similar thing called the Abbot of Unreason.
Okay, love. I feel like they're trying so hard not to call it Wacky Pope Day, but like that's what it means.
So it's Wacky Pope Day. So this tradition basically means that somebody of high status was demoted for the day to act as a servant to somebody else, basically. So a Queen of the Bean adjacent thing, but for not just a woman.
A real festival of fools from Hunchback of Notre Dame sort of thing.
Yes. So what happened is young Willie, I kind of picture it as like Y-U-N-G Willie. So like a rapper name, young Willie. So he schemed, this like teenage boy. He's great. So he schemed to make sure that he got the role of Abbot of Unreason, and then he chose Mary to be his servant. So this role required her to follow Willie wherever he went, which set up a reason for them to be in each other's company. Earlier in the day, young Willie had secured all the boats but one on the castle shore. And while he was doing that, there was actually a close call when WD-40 noticed young Willie at the boats, and he's like, what's he doing, the orphan? So Mary, Queen of Scots, had to pretend to faint to distract him, which worked.
I love.
Yeah.
It's not quite a fake going into labor moment, but it is adjacent.
Oh no, women problems. Yeah. And then later, WD-40's mother noticed horsemen gathering on the far side shore of the loch. So there's like the castle is on this island, then there's water, then there's like the mainland. And so the mother noticed it looks like there's like some sort of team, some sort of Avengers assembling over on the other side. And Mary distracted her by being like, you know who's a piece of shit? Hollywood icon Jimmy Stewart, your son. And that worked. That distracted her. And so a pearl earring was to act as, this is so Mary. She's just like, here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to escape and style. Like this, there's going to be disguises. There's going to be secret symbols. Like this is her. So a pearl earring was to act as a signal for escape. It's discovery and return assigned to Mary that all was ready. So young Willie would like lose it and then find it. And when Mary saw that happening, those would be symbols. Like that would tell her she's going to go down.
So dramatic. It's like when someone caws twice like a screech owl from outside they're like, now it's time to go. God, I love her.
So when she received the earring, she went to her room saying she needed to be alone to pray. But when inside, she put on a disguise of like a chambermaid's outfit.
Probably not the same washerwoman outfit as before, because we'd established that didn't work.
That didn't work, no, but a different outfit. So anyway, and Mary Seton put on Mary's outfit so that she could like stand and like be her.
Was Mary Seton also 6 feet tall?
I don't know. She couldn't climb up the walls, so maybe not.
Standing on really big shoes.
Exactly. So meanwhile, young Willie, who is the Abbot of Unreason, who's also kind of like the party leader, was just like, woo, let's all get really drunk. Like more drunk than that. Let's all get even more drunk, everyone. Just even more drunk. Just trying to get everybody distracted, but also incapacitated, especially WD-40, who had the keys to get out of the castle. Anyway, young Willie managed to get WD-40 drunk enough that he could grab the ring of keys. So then Mary Seton replaced Mary in her room. So I guess maybe she would stand by the window and be like, oh, I'm so sad. I'm Mary, Queen of Scots. Meh. While Mary, in her disguise, literally just walked out of the room, crossed the busy courtyard with people in it who were just like, woo, we're all drunk. Willie's a great party host. And she just like went out the front door of the gate, like of the castle. She just like went outside.
She must have been like shitting bricks the whole time though, right?
Like, I'm sure.
So scared.
Yeah.
Good for her.
So then young Willie locked the door behind them and then threw the key down the mouth of a cannon, which I'm not sure if that means everyone else is trapped inside now, but I think it does. So there was a boat waiting. She was ferried across the loch to horsemen on the other side where George was leading things, and then they sped off to freedom.
Hell yeah.
Can you give me just your immediate feedback on her escape plan and the Ocean's 11 of it all?
I have 2 thoughts immediately. Number 1, we love a girl with a scheme, a secret signal, a fake person in the window. It's wonderful. It's Shakespearean. She's obviously having a lot of fun because there's no reason for it to be this elaborate, and so good for her. Thought number 2, everyone in Scotland is so bad at schemes. Mary is nailing it. And everyone around her is like, let's assemble my army on the bank in broad daylight and make sure I stand right here. Like, come on, guys. You gotta pull your weight on the group project, is all I'm saying.
Well, but the fact that they're all like, we can't let this bitch out of our sight, except one night a year when we all get drunk and let this bitch out of our sight.
We put her in the custody of a scheming 14-year-old.
Yeah. So if you like this story, I do want to recommend Mary, Queen of Scots, Escape from Lochleven Castle by Teresa Breslin, an illustrated children's picture book, which is a great subject for a children's picture book. Okay, so she has escaped, and she headed off to Hamilton Palace because, remember, the regent's there. They're just like, we support you because we hate your piece of shit brother because we should be the regents, not him. And she's like, don't like your reasoning, but I'll accept your accommodations. So she was reunited with all the nobles, still loyal to her cause, who George had got together. Young Willie sticks with her, by the way.
Good for him.
For the rest of this for the rest of her life, Allison.
Good for young Willie, which I'm
Young
also saying
Willie.
Y-U-N-G now.
Mm-hmm. No, in terms of just there's so many awful people, and some people, when people are good like him and like Davy Rizzio, it's just yes, yes.
I'm glad she's got a couple supporting performance candidates here because she deserves them because everyone else around her is the worst.
Absolutely. So to have somebody who's, I feel like that was part of what she spent. She's there for a year, some health issues and stuff. She couldn't really actively scheme, but she's just sussing out who's here, the servants, who's these teenage girls. Are they useful? No. Is this whatever? Who is smart and actually helpful? And it's you know who is? The orphan, young Willie. That's it. And she was right. That's who it is. That's who she needed. Yeah. So she's at Hamilton Palace. When news of her escape reached Elizabeth, Elizabeth sent a letter of support because she did not want queens being captured by their subjects. Which every time Elizabeth does something that's yeah, girl, go, I'm the narrative is so much just Elizabeth and Mary hated each other, where it's no, in this instance, Elizabeth was just we are queens and I do not want you to be in prison and I'm happy you're not in prison.
Yes.
So, yeah.
Would like you to be out of prison and ruling Scotland over there. That would be great.
Yeah. So then some more paperwork happens because everyone is just you know what we need to do? Sign a paper being we support Mary now. Paperwork. This was signed by another 12 Days of Christmas. 9 earls, 9 bishops, 18 lords a-leaping, and 100 others signed a proclamation saying we will serve and obey Mary Queen of Scots. This document also denounced the Confederate assholes as traitors, declared Mary's abdication was invalid. And you know who put this one in there? Named the Hamiltons as the heirs to the throne after her and baby Prince James.
They were may I make one small request for this document? She's okay.
Is your request to be regents? Yes, please. Anyway, they also were and you're single now because we all think Bothwell is dead. He's dead to us. They're why don't you marry Aaron Jr., who is a Hamilton, but you might recall, not mentally capable to do much of anything at this point. She was we'll see about that, guys.
How about you sign the paper first?
Yeah, how about you just get me be queen first, then we'll talk about which Douglas you want me to marry. Yeah, great. Anyway, the group quickly gained more supporters. Troops were rallied. So this was she was imprisoned for a year. And then 2 weeks after her escape, she's leading an army of 6,000 people.
Yes.
The people who supported her never stopped supporting her. They were, and they also just Hollywood icon Jimmy Stewart, piece of shit. They're just, and also she's the queen. A lot of people believe that as well. It's just you can't treat a queen this way. You can't do this to a monarch. Anyway, Hollywood icon Jimmy Stewart is now officially the leader of the other army, but I feel he's always the leader of the other army. And he was in Glasgow. So she's I want to go to Glasgow where he is, and I want to face off against him personally. By battle, let us try it, she said. So she just wanted to go there and murder him. Basically.
Which, good for her, I would like that.
Yeah. Well, especially after that time when he went to visit her in prison and he was all man, I don't know. Should I be the regent? You piece of shit. He's awful. She now knew he was awful. She'd seen the paperwork and stuff. So Hollywood icon Jimmy Stewart knew he had to attack quickly before so she had 6,000 people, but I think there could be more once the Highlanders got there, but they just had to commute. So he was I need to attack before her army gets any bigger. She's getting more supporters wherever she goes. So she had chosen the Earl of Argyll to lead her troops. He's a guy who's been here and there in the story, mostly loyal to her. But anyway, so they went, so the battle is happening. They're having a battle. But then the Earl of Argyll collapsed mid-battle. Was this because he fell ill or was old, or was this because it was a planned betrayal and he was secretly working against her? Anything is possible. But that was kind of the worst timing because they now didn't have a leader of their army. So Mary tried to rally the troops herself, but found that the men had started fighting amongst themselves. So I don't know. This isn't the battle. I was confusing it with the other one where they're all drinking wine all day. I'm well, that explains that. I'm but here, I don't know. Anyway, so she had to flee. But you know what? She's good at fleeing. So she and her small entourage had to outmaneuver Hollywood icon Jimmy Stewart's supporters on the roads. So like she couldn't go anywhere where they would find her, but also the roads were all full with Hollywood and Jimmy Stewart supporters. So she had to go south. She had to stay off the main roads. She had to go through like the woods. Here's how she described this later. I have endured injuries, calamities, imprisonment, famine, cold, heat, flight, 92 miles across country without stopping. And then I have had to sleep upon the ground and drink sour milk and eat oatmeal without bread. And in the meantime, they demolish all the houses of my servants, and I cannot aid them. So she is going through it.
This
But
sounds like hot King Charles II on the run,
Yes.
hiding under trees.
her descendant, who also notably had a boat-based disguise escape. And so did Bonnie Prince Charlie, right?
I think so.
Yeah, her lineage is just like people who like disguises in boats. But this is very much that. Like, you're right. Like, he had to sleep in the tree. Like, this is her version of that.
I love that all of her descendants love disguises, and they're all like 6.5 feet tall. Just like, you are the least possible people to disguise, but they do their best.
You are the most distinctive people at all. Yeah, it's interesting, like, in terms of just who inherited what from who. But like, the fact that you're right, you're exactly right. Like, this is so much King Charles II when he had to go on the run. But then also Bonnie Prince Charlie, when he went on the run, he disguised himself as, I believe, an Irish washerwoman when he was being rowed by Flora MacDonald. I like that trickled down through the generations. What is too bad trickled down through generations is like Darnley's whole bullshit, which like James, baby
Fully
BJ
inherited.
got quite a lot of, and some others did too. Anyway, so she's just like, she's doing it. She's sleeping on the ground. She's eating oatmeal with sour milk. She's just like, whatever I got to do, this is what I'm going to do. But honestly, if you have all these like medical issues and you're sleeping on the ground, is not ideal. Anyway, so they sought sanctuary at Dundrennan Abbey, which was an actual abbey. You know, there's a lot of places. I was confusing this with in England, you know, Henry VIII turned all the abbeys into like houses. But this is actually an abbey. So this is like a little abbey with
No Henry VIII in Scotland. They were fine.
No. Where's your God now? Henry VIII. So it's a little abbey with like Catholic monks in it. So the country is Protestant. So this is kind of like out in the middle of far away from places, like sort of like secretly being monks, I guess. And so she was there with her guys. I'm not sure who her guys are, but no one whose name I've said before, but like guys she could trust. Hopefully George is there, young Willie. And she's just like, what do we do? Like brainstorm time. So they were like, maybe France, because she had, although like when she married Bothwell, France was like, fuck you, goodbye, you Protestant. But like now that she was free from Bothwell and she'd been in prison like that, people are maybe more on her side. So it's like, okay, she could go to France. She had political allies, family, the de Guises, and money there as well from being Dowager Queen of France. And she could maybe muster an army there to return to Scotland and reclaim her throne by force with a French army. Or she could go head north to meet up with her supporters there, Cochrane North Jr., the Gordons, the Highlanders. But Mary was like, option 3, bitches, England. And they're like, tell us more. What do you mean?
Why?
Because she felt Elizabeth had been so supportive of her, right? Like during her imprisonment, she sent Throcco. She also, like when Mary escaped, Elizabeth was like, yay, good for you. And Mary had, through this whole time, they'd had this pen pal relationship, and she always felt like no one gets me, but Elizabeth would. She and I, like she called her sister and stuff. And she was like, I think if I go to England, Elizabeth will help me out. Because she said, like, I want you to not be in jail, etc. And so the others were like, but what about France or Northern Scotland? And she like wrote later herself, she's like, no, I decided this myself. Like I commanded my best friends to permit me to have my own way. And this is where it's like, in retrospect, and this happens not just with this, but like with marrying Darnley and marrying Bothwell, people are like, well, why would Mary make these bad decisions? It's like she didn't make a bad decision on purpose. She didn't know what was going to happen. She made what seemed to her like the best decision. And I think it's,
let me go to the country that's right here, shares a land border with the country I want back, and has a monarch who has been visibly sympathetic to me throughout this whole scenario, and who has a pretty sizable military who could conceivably help me out. Like, it's not a bad plan.
A reason, like, how about the, like, Elizabeth had sent Throcco, like, she saved her life, really. So, anyway, so she wrote a letter to Elizabeth and included in this letter. So, previously in their, like, pen pal relationship, Elizabeth had sent Mary this, like, heart-shaped diamond as a token of friendship. And Mary sent that back. And I like that she has it. How did she have that with her? Did she take it with her to Lochleven? I don't know how she's... One of her guys got it, like, because Hollywood Ike and Jimmy Stewart took all the diamonds, right? Anyway, or maybe Elizabeth had sent it to her while she was in jail. Anyway, Mary sent this heart-shaped diamond, which is like a cute, like Sailor Moon adjacent thing to send to somebody, a little sparkly jewel. And she sent it back to her as like a token of like, saying, you sent this to me as a friendship token. I'm returning it. Like this, we're friends. And she signed the letter, your affectionate sister. And then Allison, she headed off to England in pants disguise.
Pants disguise.
She dresses up like a man, and she also cuts off all her hair and or shaves her head, unclear, to avoid recognition.
I can't decide if I want to call that a Catalina de Erauso move or a Mulan move, but both of them exceptional.
I didn't know that until just this research I've been doing. I'm like, she cut off all her hair? Like she's committed to this. Like she knows it's like, I am 6 feet tall, unrecognizable, and my hair is long and red. But anyway, so she's just like, committing to this bit. I'm just like a man, and off we go. So she and her friends commandeered a small fishing boat to carry her and 16 followers on a 4-hour voyage across the Solway Firth, which is like from Scotland to England. And so among those 16 was young Willie.
Young Willie.
As well as George Douglas, like 2 guys who came out of nowhere. And I love that they're connected to Hollywood Ike and Jimmy Stewart, yet they take her side. And I like that they're Douglases, because historically in this story, a Douglas has been a bad
thing to hear.
When you hear that war cry, something shitty is going to happen. But these are like 2 good Douglases.
A Douglas, not like that. Not like that, though.
Yeah, a Douglas. Willie, George, 2 good ones. So they're like on this 4-hour boat trip, and midway across, allegedly, she had a sudden change of heart, and she was just like, she asked the boatman, like, can you switch direction? Like, let's go to France instead. But the tide was like headed in England direction, and so that's where they went.
Also, they're in a fishing boat. Like, that's not going to make it all the way to France. You're going to capsize.
True. There's so many boat moments in this, like starting with she went to France in the first place, and she was the only one who didn't get seasick. And then when she was coming from France back to Scotland, like she witnessed this other boat sink and all the people in it die, and she's like, "Ugh, that's a bad omen." And so now she's in another boat-based sort of like, I don't know. There's a lot of boat omens.
Boat omens.
In that story. Bowmans.
Bowmans.
And that is where she went. She headed to England, and that's where we're leaving the story for this week.
How will she be received?
With no hair.
With no
dressed
hair.
Like a man.
In her pants, looking amazing in a fishing boat.
So that's, yeah. We will pick up the story again next week. But this is like, so this is a part of the story you did not know as well.
Yeah, I know the names of the things that happened. Like, I am familiar with the words of the casket letters, and I know that there was an escape. But like, knowing the details of it, it's really validating my picture of Mary in my head, because I'm like, no, yeah, that's exactly what she would do. That's exactly what she would do. Yes, girl, do it. I find her escapes extremely satisfying. I love her schemes. They're my favorite thing about her.
Mm-hmm. And this is where, like last week's, or I guess 2 weeks ago's, the last episode, like the Mary Queen Scots episode, the Bothwell episode, like the fact that she wasn't in a place where she was able to, like either physically or mentally or whatever, like get the schemes done, where she's just being like taken place to place. I was just like, this is, and I think that's how some people imagine her whole story is she's just a person who's just a victim being dragged place to place, where it's like, no, her story is like jumping out of windows, climbing down a rope ladder, dressed like a man, landing on a horse, like
dressed like a washerwoman, hiding in a boat. God, she'll try anything once, and I love it.
Yeah. No, trying to jump over the wall. She's like, I'm 6 feet tall. I can take this. Like, that's her story. Like, so much, I don't know. It is the Bothwell stuff. I think people get bogged down in that and think just like, oh, I guess either she was the whole thing, but like Elizabeth leads from the head and Mary leads from the heart. It's like, no, bitches. Like, Mary is not just this like foolish person who's like swept away by like passion or whatever. She's just like making it a scheme with like unnecessary disguises involved, but it's still successful. Like,
it worked. Can you imagine Elizabeth in a disguise escaping from a palace? Absolutely not.
I've never heard of any Elizabeth I related disguise stories. Mary's, choose which one. She's in disguise constantly. Like, so this is where, yeah, I find that this is sort of like the last time was a bummer, frankly. The Bothwell stuff is just like, that is, I would think in retrospect, a low point for her. Like, when she herself is also saying, like, I want to kill myself now. Like, she was not in a good headspace. She was not physically well. Like, things were bad. But this episode, she just like sits and waits and then just like bam. Yeah.
For the listener, we're recording this one immediately after the Bothwell episode because we couldn't end our conversation on that one. It's too much of a bummer. We have to go about our days after this. So we're like, can we get one win before we stop? So
I'm just sitting in it. I'm just like so satisfied with the escape plan. It's so ridiculous and cinematic, really. And it doesn't bother me, but I just think it's notable that of the movies of her story, like the Saoirse Ronan movie also basically it stops before she gets to Lochleven. Like, Rain was canceled before they could do this stuff. Like, I haven't seen the Katharine Hepburn one, but that one, the Katharine Hepburn movie, is like her beloved, courageous lover, Bothwell. Like, I don't think no one ever puts this part in Mary Queen of Scots movies or TV series, and it's so cinematic.
it's so cinematic. It comes on the heels of the biggest cinematic bummer that you can imagine. So it's a tough narrative to tell, and it's much easier to start way earlier or way later. But like,
Yeah.
this is a satisfying, like, midpoint.
It was so good. I think like so many of the stories are just kind of like Rizzio, Darnley, Bothwell. Like, that's the part of the story that is often told and retold.
Yeah.
But this part is no less dramatic. She's no less capable. Like, I just love it. I love when I was reading this, I couldn't wait to go through this with you, especially like now that I know that you hadn't heard a lot of these details before. It's just like, oh, here comes young Willie.
Young
Get ready.
Willie.
He's got young Willie style. He's got like the pearl earring. He's got like the Abbot of Unreason party escape. Like, it's iconic. It's just like, what a treat. I also love that she tried to escape as a washerwoman, didn't work. She tried to climb over the walls, didn't work. She never stopped trying. You know, she wasn't like, I guess I want to escape, blurb, blurb, blurb.
Like immediately back to my own whiteboard.
Yeah. Her whiteboard, which is her embroidery.
She's just embroidering Mary Seton falling over the wall, and she's like, note to self, that does not work.
Or she's embroidering sort of like the floor plan of the castle, and like, you'll go here and I'll go here. Like, you know, like making them that sort of thing. It's great. And there's more of a story to tell because she's going to England. And I don't know how many people listening to this have now read ahead in a biography or on Wikipedia or anything, but there's a lot of people who don't know the story and they're waiting for us to tell it. So I'm excited to get to, because next week we're going to get to where the story interrelates with your book. Why don't you tell everyone about your first book?
That was a beautiful segue, Anne. Thank you. I wrote a book that is an Elizabethan spy novel that the first half of which is all about Mary's time in England, topic of next week's podcast. It's called A Tip for the Hangman. You can read it. There will be some spoilers for next week's podcast if you get through it before we come back to tell you what happens.
Maybe you could like buy the book, hold off, read it after, and then what's fresh in your mind. Yeah.
I think you can read to like chapter 5 and then I would pause.
That's true. Yeah, maybe get it or get the audiobook. Just like listen to it a bit. Pause, listen to our next episode, and then go back to it. Yeah. And then you have another book that's coming out.
I do. I have another book coming out in October. It's called Let the Dead Bury the Dead. You can find that on my website, AlisonEpstein.com. I think by the time this episode airs, I will also be able to tell you all that I have a third book coming out in 2025, just announced in mid-June. So by the time this airs, it will be real and y'all will know about it. You can find more about that on my website as well.
Very exciting. And if it's not announced, we could edit that out.
I'm pretty confident. That's why I waited till this one.
And can you tell people about the pre-order thing for Let the Dead Bury the Dead, where they send you the receipts and stuff?
Yes, of course. That's on my website. Also, it's on my linked on all of my things. But if you pre-order Let the Dead Bury the Dead, I got some original character art commissioned by the fantastic designer Ari Kaiser. And I would love to send you some as a thank you for pre-ordering. So if you just drop your receipt into the Google form that's on my website.
Lovely. And I believe are those the same pictures you have framed on your walls?
They are. I'm looking at them right now. They're over there.
Well, because I believe we were recording some nonsense when the delivery person came and dropped those off at your house.
And I believe I derailed the entire recording. I was like, guys, I have to open these. These are my babies. And they were.
Mm-hmm. It's wonderful. Yeah. So you have your website, you have your books. That's how people can keep up with you. You have your newsletter as well.
I do indeed. Dirtbags Through the Ages. It's rapscallison.substack.com. It is terrible people from history delivered to your inbox bi-weekly.
And to keep up with me and this podcast, so we're on Instagram at Vulgar History Pod. I don't even remember what images. Oh, the black pearls. Well, I'll show the picture of Elizabeth portrait where she's wearing Mary's stolen pearls that Hollywood icon Jimmy Stewart pawned to her. Anyway, Instagram, we're at Vulgar History Pod, and I'm on TikTok at Vulgar History, where again, my cat Hepburn does make audio appearances. I think I recorded one and she wasn't there, and someone was like, "Is she okay? Where's Hepburn?"
She's okay. As of this recording, I have seen her. She's still very cute.
Yeah, no, proof of life. But yeah, maybe I'll show a picture of Hepburn in the show notes for this as well. I don't know. This, honestly, the American Scots season is getting increasingly unhinged. Like, by the time I got to WD-40, I'm glad you found that funny. Because I was just like, I'm hilarious! But I'm like, or am I losing my mind? I'm not sure.
The Tits Up Brigade got to hear my unhinged, genuine laugh at that one. So you are appreciated, at least by me.
Yes, yes. And then we have our merch store, which is vulgarhistory.com/store, which is better shipping stuff for the US. Vulgarhistory.redbubble.com is better for international orders. And honestly, Tits Up Brigade, like, we have the Where's Your God Now John Knox merch from the Marie Diggies, but like, out of everything we've talked about with Mary Queen of Scots, like, merch concepts, the Brigade is like so good with merch. Like, they were the ones who were like, you need to do Where's Your God Now John Knox. And now it's like, I have to say, a bestseller in my very strange store.
New York Times merch bestseller. Where's Your God?
Yeah. So I don't know, there's like the Darnley murder banner, if there's a way to like reinterpret that to be like less gruesome. I don't know. I don't like, what was it? The Scarlet Adventuress. Could just be that. I don't know. Anyway.
I was picturing Hollywood icon Jimmy Stewart.
Icon Jimmy Stewart, but like into like a done up, like he's in Renaissance era. I don't know. Anyway, yeah, so we merch store. And then I have the Patreon, patreon.com/AnnFosterWriter. So that's where you get early ad-free access to episodes. And if you pledge at least $5 or more, you can get the spin-off podcast, Vulgar Peace Theater, where we talk about costume dramas, and also So This Asshole, where we talk about gross men in history. And when I get to 500 Patreon supporters, I will do a special John Knox So This Asshole episode. But I will not do that until and if such time I get 500 followers, because and it's a similar thing you did with your newsletter. You didn't do the Darnley until you got to 500 followers, I believe.
You got to save it up. You got to give the people a reason to tell their friends. Tell your friends. You guys want that, John.
Well, and also it's like I need that strength and Tits Out Brigade energy behind me to have the constitutional ability to like spend that much time thinking about John Knox.
You really have to gird the tits for this one, yeah.
Ugh. There's something else I was going to say. Patreon. Oh, yeah. So because we talk about Vulgar Peace Theater and we do various costume dramas, and there's like different things we have. At this point, this comes out, I'm not even sure which episodes are out. But at some point, we need to do a Mary Queen of Scots movie. I don't know. That might be another live event scenario. Not
At
sure.
the end of this season, maybe?
Yeah.
Celebration
Yeah,
of
maybe
reading all of these books.
Maybe the Saoirse Ronan one. I don't know. It's funny because I saw that. I watched Rain, which ended in 2017. The Saoirse Ronan movie came out in 2018. And I was like, I know the story of Mary Queen of Scots. So I watched the movie. I was like, yes, that's correct. I knew that she had a brother. Yes. John Knox, I'm familiar. But now with the amount of knowledge I now have, I feel like I'd watch it and I'd be like, I don't know. I think we talked, this will have already come out, I think. So I interviewed Jennifer Mark Henderson, who wrote the Jean Gordon biography. And I think I asked her at one point, I'm like, did you watch that movie? And she was like, yes. And I was like, you know how the brother in that movie looks like a Viking mixed with Outlander? And she's like, oh my God, yes. Because Hollywood icon Jimmy Stewart was like, the portraits of him, he looks like an Elizabethan gentleman. Like, people in Edinburgh were not stylistically very different from people in like London. Like, the Highlanders were doing their own thing. And so in the Saoirse Ronan movie, they have Hollywood icon Jimmy Stewart with his like beard and like shaggy hair and like 12 necklaces and like eyeliner.
Looks like a dwarf. We're like, what are we doing?
He kind of looks like Braveheart a little bit. Like, they're really just being like, he's from Scotland, where it's like, well, he is from Scotland, but it's like quite a different thing to be from the Highlands.
He's not from the woods. Like, he lives in a house.
So even like, I watched the movie, I was like, oh, that's an interesting take on him. But now I'm just like, oh no, now that I understand more the difference between the Lowlands and the Highlands, I feel like watching that movie might be interesting. Anyway, I don't know, Tits Out Brigade, if that would be a thing you'd enjoy, let me know. And anyway, I think next time, we're going to talk about Mary's time in England. We might get to a scoring moment, which is going to be a real discussion.
We have a lot to cover in the scoring portion. Also, knowing Anne's ability to underestimate how many episodes the story is going to take, that may not be in the next one.
That might not be in the next one. But yeah, the way that she became Queen of Scots at 6 days old, and her story was just unrelenting from then on. No one else I've ever covered on the podcast has had so many things happen in so many years. Usually people are and then she went off and had children for 20 years, and then she came back. But she's just unrelenting.
We're on episode 7, and she's 25?
Yeah. Yeah. I can't believe her, it was, her time in Scotland was 6 years of reigning actively in Scotland. So much happened. So much in the last 6 months. Anyway, thank you so much, Allison, for spending so much time talking to me about nonsense. And I'll talk to you next time. Until then, everybody, keep your pants on and your tits out, and shave your head, climb out a window, whatever.
The washerwoman, follow your bliss.
Vulgar History is hosted, written, and researched by Anne Foster and edited by Christina Lumagi.
Talmor, Sheshin Murachi. Talmor is my home. My family have worked the land for generations. My gran says the island does not belong to us, but we belong to the island. And we must be ready, for a great evil is coming, and death follows with it.
Listen and subscribe to the latest season of Undertow, The Harrowing, a Storyglass production presented by Realm, available wherever you get your podcasts.
Nowadays, trends and news cycles change faster than we can blink. But there are some things that withstand the test of time. And if you're looking for a connection to something timeless, and maybe also a glimpse of life at a slower pace, I believe everyone can relate to the very human experiences explored in Jane Austen's novels. And that's where I come in. My name is Alison Larkin. I'm a writer, comedian, and narrator and host of the Jane Austen podcast with Alison Larkin. I spent a lot of my childhood in the part of England where Jane Austen lived and wrote, and now that I live in the States, nothing gives me a sense of homecoming quite like narrating her books. On this show, you'll listen to award-winning narration. I'll give myself a pat on the back for that. As well as conversations with actors, writers, and other fascinating people who all share a passionate love for Jane Austen. So please, join me as we embark on a wonderful journey through Jane Austen's work. Be sure to listen and subscribe to the Jane Austen podcast with Alison Larkin, wherever you get your podcasts.